A very warm welcome to everyone, to our clients, our staff who are here, and hopefully a few future clients who've chosen to join us tonight. We're very proud of our offices, and we've run a couple of these events which have been a tremendous success. So I hope that you guys have a fantastic evening and really enjoy yourselves. I think the whole sort of theming behind tonight is all about challenging convention and how you can make an impact by doing that. And we're very fortunate in having 4 key speakers tonight who are going to share some of their insight. I have a small confession. I'm concentrating really hard on getting the names right because we had a staff event here about a month ago, and I introduced, thanks Peter, I introduced Alex Good as Andy Good, who was a tubby Leicester fly-off. So I'm really concentrating, especially on Jamie. I don't want to get a punch. But very, very warm welcome to you guys. Thank you so much for giving up your time. We know how busy you all are, and it's a real treat to have you here. So to Jamie, Neville, Carmen, and to Peter, thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate it. And on that note, I'm going to hand back to John. One final thing, just to say a big thanks to Sarah, Becky, and our marketing team, who've worked tirelessly to pull this all together tonight. So thanks, guys. It's top job. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening again, and can I welcome everyone who's also following us live on Twitter and Facebook tonight. Thank you for joining us, as well as obviously all of you here in the arena. My name's John Ridgeon. I'm the chairman of the active division here at CSM, and we have 4 fantastic guests for you this evening. You'll meet them in a moment. We've got 2 current world-class athletes. We also have 2 business leaders who are both influential and very active in the whole sport and entertainment space. So it's going to be fascinating to hear their comments tonight about the current trends, the innovation, the challenges, the opportunities in both sport and, I guess even more importantly, sport partnership and sponsorships. Now, if you want to share on social any of the comments you hear tonight, and please do, can I encourage you to use the hashtag CSM Changing Room. That's hashtag CSM Changing Room. Thanks very much. Shall we meet our first guest? He's a man who's not only a star of British and Irish Lions, England and Saracens, he's also a man who's absolutely on fire at the moment. Only last weekend, when Saracens beat Wasps, he became only the 3rd ever forward in the history of Premiership rugby to achieve a hat-trick of tries. So he's in great form. It's great to have him here. Please welcome Jamie George.
That's how that went in there. Jamie, welcome. We'll talk Saracens in a moment, but first of all, I think we've got to talk British and Irish Lions. We were all captivated by it, 3 or 4 months ago now. It was great drama. But what was it like to actually be right in the middle of it, be in the squad, experience the intensity of a Lions tour of New Zealand?
Yeah, it was special, to be honest. It was. I think it lived up to everything that I'd been told it was going to be. You're always told that it's one of a kind, and it's something that you'll never get ever again in your life, and you almost sort of take that with a pinch of salt, thinking, surely it can't be that good, but it really was. I met some incredible people. We actually achieved some pretty incredible things looking back on it, and to be a part of it and to learn off the guys that I was there with was really special.
And the final result, a draw, was that fair or was that deeply dissatisfying, or was it something in between?
There's still a huge amount of frustration. Obviously, like I said, it's a great achievement to go down to New Zealand and draw with those guys in their own park, but there's still a little bit of me that's hugely frustrated because they were there for the taking, if I'm honest, and we weren't quite there on the 3rd test. I think we probably let ourselves down in that, and to get a draw, we probably did well, to be honest. So I don't think I've ever seen the All Blacks. I'm a big fan of rugby, and I've never seen the All Blacks rattled like that. So it was frustrating, but we'll take a draw.
I suspect we might get some questions later about both Lions and England, but I want to talk Saracens now. Really forward-looking club. Looks like it's a fun place to be as well. You've been part of that world for many, many years now. Saracens do things differently, don't they? Your pre-season tours are stuff of legend now. You play the odd game at Wembley. You just do things differently. So, what is the secret of the Saracens' success? Is it that you have fun together, or is it a little bit more complicated than that?
Yeah, it's not just fun. I can tell you, there's some hard work in there somewhere. But I guess part of the formula is is the closer that we are off the field, the better that we're going to be on the field. The more we care about each other, the more that we're willing to work hard for each other. And I sort of came in, my first year as a professional was when sort of the Saracens revolution happened with Edward Griffiths and Brendan Venter. And that was the very premise of what they wanted to say. They said, we're going to treat you unbelievably well. In return, you're going to work unbelievably hard. So we did work hard, but we've had some good times. We've been on some good trips. And, I feel very privileged to be playing for a club like Sarries because, I've now grown up. I grew up supporting them and I probably got my best friends playing at Saracens still now. And to say that I can play with my best friends every weekend is pretty special. And I think that's a large part of what our successes have been over the last 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, excellent. Jamie, we'll talk a little bit more in a moment, but let's get our second guest out now. I'm sure many of you in the room, all of you in the room, will be aware of the incredible diversity and innovation that Vitality has shown in terms of their sport sponsorships and partnerships that range from Premiership football clubs like Arsenal all the way through to just getting people active through things like partnerships with Park Run, and also the Healthy Living campaign that Vitality run. Again, I'm sure resonates with many of us in the room. It certainly does with me. So it's great to have the CEO of Vitality with us tonight. Please welcome Neville Kubovic. Good to see you. Neville, good to see you. Thanks very much for being with us. Let's talk rugby to start with. And of course, teammate of this man is Mara Itoje from Saracens, and he's one of your ambassadors alongside the likes of Jess Ennis-Hill and Ellie Simmons and Joe Root and people like that. So just talk about the ambassadors, the strategy behind the ambassadors, because clearly, Neville, it's a big part of your marketing campaign.
So I think one's got to look at it as a portfolio of ambassadors. We're a brand that is trying to create make people healthier, lead an active, healthy lifestyle. And sort of the epitome of that is some of these great ambassadors. So we like to associate ourselves with those people that share the same values as us as an organisation, and they genuinely believe in what we're trying to achieve. And I think the real litmus test is when we're actually talking about them becoming an ambassador with them. It's the question is, do I need to write a script for them when they're in front of somebody, or don't I? And from Jess Ennis right through to Ellie, Joe Root, Murrow, they get it, and they really epitomise what we're trying to achieve. And I think they're very, very inspirational, and it's worked very, very well for us as an organisation.
As well as ambassadors, you're increasingly, it appears, getting involved in women's sport, in netball and Sunday Times Sportswoman of the Year, etc., etc. So just why that appears to be increasing shift into women's sport, and where do you think women's sport is now, certainly in this country, Neville?
So I think, we want to inspire people across society, whether it's children, whether it's women, whether it's men. I think we've got some big challenges in this in the UK around women in sport. We simply just saw it as an extension of what we're trying to do, but I really think the real challenge is to get, as an organisation, you want to make sure that if you're sponsoring something that people are watching, that you're getting value out of it. And that's why we've chosen those particular sports, because they are well run, they are well supported. I'll speak specifically about netball and the association we have there. And in terms of the Sportswoman of the Year, I think we really, as a society, need to try and get equilibrium. And I guess the real challenge is, if there are any broadcasters out there, is to start giving more emphasis to the women's game. And I think that's one of the innovations that need to take place, is how can we actually elevate women in sport and sporting teams to get that not only participation, but get people watching. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm sure I speak for a lot of companies out here, we're not going to put our money in in anything that isn't going to give us value. But it's a two-way situation. It's got to work, both ways.
And we were talking about some fairly stark statistics,
Yeah.
Neville, you were sharing with me, and I think just in terms of the level of challenge still, I think these rather bring them home.
I mean, my team just gave me some stats here that women's sports make up just 7% of total UK sports media coverage, which I don't think is that surprising, but women's sport only attracts 1% of sports sponsorship. So it's even disproportionate to the 7%. And what's actually quite interesting is our journalistic friends, if any of you are here, just 1.8% of UK sports journalism is written by women, compared to 11% in Australia. So, I think all the stats point to we've got to do something.
Yeah.
And I think women in sport can be unbelievable role models for society. And we know that society has got a lot of issues that it's facing around fitness, wellness, well-being, and what better way for people to be inspired by women?
Yeah, absolutely. And got any more plans in terms of further extending your portfolio of women's sport?
Well, through our friends at CSM, they're always bringing us opportunities.
Good. Good to hear.
If I had a penny for every opportunity Mr. Van Rau Jr., Kevin, brought along, but it's not official yet, but we will be sponsoring the Women's World Cup hockey.
Fantastic.
So we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
We think that the hockey is a great sport where, in fact, I think the women's hockey, and I'm sticking my neck out here, is far more exciting than men's hockey. And we're very excited about that.
Which is the perfect segue, Neville, into our next guest, because I'm sure she'll have all sorts of interesting comments to make about women in sport. She's a former Formula One test driver for both Renault and Lotus, one of the world's leading female motor racing drivers, and an absolute inspiration for the next generation of young women looking to break into motor racing. So please welcome Carmen Jorda. Carmen, I don't want to mischaracterise motor racing, but I think it's fair to say that it's one of the most male-dominated sports in the world. So how hard has it been for you to break into motor racing, and is it getting any easier?
Well, you're completely right of what you just said, because I've been facing this sport since I was 11. I have another sister, so I was the boy of the family. I had to take that role, and I had to face many things since I started in go-karts. Since boys crying when I was overtaking them, since fights, since many things that it made it really complicated. And now when I look back and when I'm testing at my home track in doing karting, and there are young girls, I see them and I'm like, oh my God, you don't know through where you're going. Because I had to fight through many things to get to the top of the sport just because of the fact that I'm a woman. So I don't think it's fair, because in all the other sports like tennis, like football, there are many other ways for women to get to the top and they are recognized as champions, but in Formula One doesn't happen.
But is it getting easier? Can you imagine in 5-10 years' time a woman being F1 champion?
I mean, of course, it's getting easier because I think there are much more women involved in motorsport, but in many aspects like mechanics, engineers, drivers, hospitality, marketing, like maybe I will say 5 to 10 years ago, there were not many. Now it's getting easier, but I think the right way to do it, at least as a driver, I will say that a woman world championship for Formula One will be the right step, because I'm one of the 11th women in the world that make it to Formula One, but I'm not official. I haven't achieved my dream. And as the man, as Lewis Hamilton, for example, he can make his dream come true, like fighting and working hard. So why I cannot make it? So I really believe that one day or another it will happen, and I think is the right thing to do in the sport.
Absolutely. Let's talk social media now. You have a huge following, some 250,000 people in terms of your social media following. And Formula One is changing. Liberty Media is a little more forward-thinking than perhaps Bernie was in this area. Mm-hmm. Drivers now, teams are allowed to have their own social media accounts. But just talk us through how social media has kind of changed your world and all the things it's done for you, but also the responsibility that brings with 250,000 people following what you say to them.
Well, social media, talking about Formula One in social media, with all my respect to Bernie Ecclestone, and I think Formula One is what it is today because of Bernie Ecclestone. I remember talking to him 2 years ago about Instagram, and he said, "What is this? This is not making money to me." So it didn't make sense to him, so I think right now with Liberty is a much different point of view, which they are trying to expand much more and to reach the fans and to make the fans be more involved with the inside of Formula One, with how we get ready, how the races are happening, how everything is working. Otherwise, it's just like during the race and what's happening during every lap, and that's it. And I think that makes it more interesting for the fans. And like on my personal side, I feel and I try to work the same way because I'm working hard and I'm trying to achieve my dream, and I like to show the people and my fans how I do it and how I work hard to make it happen. So I use social media as a platform to share with my fans, obviously with the advice of CSM guys, which help me every day. And I like to see as well all the analytics and from where my fans are and what do they like, because I think it's a way to connect with them.
Very good. Carmen, we'll talk a little bit more in a moment, but let's get our fourth and final panellist up now. And probably many of them in the room should actually personally thank our next guest, because he produces a product in Lucozade Sport that probably has helped many of us struggle around a large cycling event or running event or swimming event or triathlon when probably we hadn't done enough preparation. So thank you for that. Also, I believe that Lucozade is... I was talking to Jim Glover about this yesterday. We believe that the longest serving client of CSM is actually Lucozade. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome the COO of Lucozade Ribena Suntory, Peter Harding, up. And Peter, thank you.
Pleasure.
So let's talk about the whole health agenda, because it's something you've absolutely embraced. You've taken a product or many products, and you've reduced the sugar content. You've also, around Lucozade Sport, have created a marketing campaign that's all about getting more people to move more often. So just talk us through the journey you've gone through to get to where you are now, because I'm sure you don't take lightly, taking a much loved British product and actually changing the formula and changing the way you market it.
Yeah, it's a good question, John. Thank you. So the Lucozade and Ribena were founded back in the 1920s and 1930s actually founded by doctors, both brands, and were very popular as remedies for vitamin C deficiency and for energy deficiency, which is Lucozade. So it's quite ironic that we fast forward to the year 2010, 2015, and suddenly these well-loved, trusted brands are being portrayed as at the centre of an obesity crisis in our country. And we all know that our success, whether it's a business or a brand or it's personal, it's all about reputation. And if we don't have a reputation, we're not trusted, the future is pretty bleak. So that was a very strong incentive for us to change. And the other part of it is that we thought, well, what if we switch the emphasis of our marketing campaign? So it's less about encouraging everyone to be the next Olympic gold medalist, but it's about encouraging everyone to take a little bit more exercise every day. Just the small things adding up can count. So that then became the mission and passion of our new company, because we're under new ownership in the last 3 years. And it is to create drinks that are better for you. They're all lower in sugar. That's the first thing that our company does. And the second thing is we want to get more people in the UK taking more exercise more often. And we're already seeing tremendous results on both those campaigns.
Very good. And I understand that your sort of passion for well-being goes beyond the product. It also goes to the workplace, and you're putting in place measures to make the well-being of your staff absolutely central. I know it's something that you do as well, Neville. Just talk us through again the journey you've got to in terms of this being central to your thinking, and in practical ways, what are you actually doing?
Well, and the first thing is that the mission and the purpose of our business has just breathed new energy and life into our employees, and they want to be part of it. And you can imagine the shift of, rather than seeing your business and your brand on the wrong side of the argument, on the front page of The Sun, criticised by Jamie Oliver, criticised by politicians, suddenly on the right side of the argument, Jamie Oliver and myself, we're now good mates.
Very good.
No, we've got Jeremy Hunt and the Department of Health applauding the moves that we've made, and the press are very keen to support us on that goal. So there's a huge amount of energy in our organisation for this. We launched our campaign, our national campaign is called Made to Move, but it's a brand to consumer campaign. But we've now made it a brand to business campaign. We started in our own business, and for a month had a simple campaign which was, how many steps can you take? And it was competitive, we had teams. And over the course of 1 month, the business took 90 million steps. 600 people, a relatively small business, we took 90 million steps. We're now we're hopefully going to take that campaign into Tesco, so it's business to business. And it's just a question of, if we do that in our business, then what if all businesses were to take that simple step? What an impact we could have on the health of the nation. And it's about feeling good at work. None of us want to come in feeling unfit, lethargic, unenergetic, sitting in boring meeting rooms, etc. That's not what life's about. We like an energetic, happy workforce and get stuff done.
No, absolutely. We've got all the panellists up now, so we can let's broaden the debate. And Neville, interested in your view on this in terms of the whole health agenda. I know it's really important to you. It's really what Vitality is all about. But let's be honest. On a daily basis, we read pretty depressing stuff in the media. I was only reading this morning about increased levels of child obesity. We're becoming, I am told, a less active nation. So, in reality, even though brands like Vitality, brands like Lucozade are leading the drive, how much can you actually achieve in terms of holding back and turning around what seems to be the trends in first world countries?
Well, I mean, I can just speak for our base, which is nearly 1 million lives that we cover. We see enormous behavioural change. People who get put on a program get incentivised to change their behaviours, improves health outcomes dramatically. So we've got a huge amount of data that actually backs this up, where people who we've looked at over a period of time, a longitudinal study of people who were sedative and then became active, and how that's improved their health. And we measure that in numerous ways. But I think it really is about creating a positive environment and encouraging people and rewarding them for actually taking the steps to lead a healthy lifestyle. So I think we also, as an organisation, take it very seriously with our staff. We did 1 billion steps, by the way, in the last. In fact, the top person actually did a million steps themselves, which in itself was worrying because he was my CFO and I didn't see him for a while. But I think it is really about the narrative that starting with children right through to people who become parents. It really is creating an environment and a program where people actually are incentivised to lead a healthy life, and that's what we're about.
And Carmen, Jamie, what about sports? Are sports doing enough to reach beyond their natural fan base and actually do their bit? So, for example, the RFU, yes, they run rugby, I'm sure very successfully in England, but do you think the big federation should be doing more to try and just get the whole nation active, not create the next England hooker, but to create just more activity?
Yeah, I think potentially maybe. I can't speak too much on behalf of the RFU, but I know at Saracens they're working really hard on it. So we have the Saracen Sports Foundation, which I'm a trustee of, and that's something that they're really looking at across all ages. So they run an over 50s sort of dance class, right the way down to all sorts with younger children, and that sort of thing I think is an important thing for us as players to be a part of, because I think some people may see us as role models or whatever it might be, and whatever part that we can play in that is huge. So we definitely see the importance of it and want to play a big part in it as well.
Where does motorsport fit in, Carmen, in terms of just encouraging people to do more?
Well, I think they do things around the Grand Prix weekends, like running and involving people around activities. But to be honest, I think they are focused on other things, not just too much, because Formula One is not just physics, but there are other things that they are more involved in, I would say.
Let's talk, and by the way, I promise to open up questions from the floor in a moment, but just want to touch on Asia as well. Some big events going to Asia over the next few years. We've got Winter Olympics next year, we've got Rugby World Cup 2019 in Japan, we've got Summer Olympics in Tokyo in 2020. So it's going to be a real focus. And Jamie, obviously you hope England will win the World Cup. And Peter's got a question for you in a moment. And but what are your hopes for, parking England for a moment, what are your hopes for rugby as a whole, that what Japan might achieve for your sport in 2019?
Yeah, I think it just puts rugby on the map, doesn't it? I think all World Cups, I was a part of the 2015 World Cup, played a small part of it. And even then you can see how it sort of branches the game out to people that may not have even experienced it. My brother was living in Chile at the time, and he was saying that the country of Chile went mad because obviously Argentina did well, they got to the semi-final, and I think stuff like that is hugely important. For it to be in Tokyo in 2019 it's going to be huge. I played my under-20s junior World Cup final there, and the country just went ballistic for the tournament. They absolutely loved it, and that was just at under-20 level. So I can imagine that it's going to be a serious spectacle come 2019.
I'm sure it is. And Carmen, tell me about motorsport in Asia. Is that an increasingly important focus for motorsport?
For sure. In Formula One, we have 3 Grand Prix in Asia. We have Singapore, Japan, and Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai. And I think it's a really growing market because 40% of all the followers, and especially the younger generation, are coming from Asia. So I think it's a really big focus in Formula One Asia market.
Very good. Well, I think it's time to open questions up from the floor. So you can ask questions for any one of our panellists, or just generally. I'm sure all happy to jump in. And if you're not feeling too shy, please state your name and where you're from when you ask a question. Who's first?
Hello. Hi, Sam from CSM. Jamie, you've obviously played with Maritoje and for Sarries, for England, for the Lions. How good is he now, and how great could he become?
He's all right, yeah. He's all right. He's a freak. I'm not gonna lie, he's a freak. It's actually scary how good he could become. I think you look at every time he's gone up a level from Saracens to England to the Lions, he's stepped up and taken his game to a different place, and I think that's a huge credit to him in terms of the work that he's doing. But his mindset is that he just wants to take people on. He wants to challenge himself, and so I take a huge amount of inspiration from him. And it was quite a worrying thing when I was sort of 21, 22, still technically a young player, and he came in at 18 and just started smashing people around in training, which was never enjoyable. But he already is one of the best players in the world, and I think he's just continuing to take his game to different levels. So like I said, it's a bit scary how good he can be.
Who's next?
Hi, I'm Becky from CSM, essentially. One for you, Carmen. Having achieved what you've achieved so far in motorsport...
How many, sorry?
Having achieved what you've achieved so far in motorsport, what's the one piece of advice you'd give your younger self or other women wanting to achieve the same in motorsport?
I will say not to give up, for sure, because there's so many people and so many things that will tell you, oh, you cannot do it, especially you're a woman, it's very difficult. So I think you just have to put your focus in your mind and keep fighting until the end.
Jamie, talking of women in sport, where do you think rugby is right now in terms of integration of women in rugby and kind of where the two games sit at the moment?
Yeah, it's certainly growing. I think the women's game has become. I think the Women's World Cup was huge. Was it this year? Sorry. And the interaction between the men's team and the women's team is actually growing. So at Sarries, we often send the men's guys over to do a few coaching sessions with the women, and then they come over and watch us train sometimes, which I think is huge to keep that level of interaction high. And I think you compare where the women's game was 5 years ago in terms of the standard of the games. It's scary how far it's come, and I think it's in a really good place at the minute, and especially with the introduction of the sevens, I think that's going to be a big thing for women's rugby. So it's a really exciting space at the minute.
Very good.
So can I do a question about that? So will you think to have a female player in your team?
Good question.
Good question. If they were good enough, I don't see why not. But I think.
It's a good question. I mean, I know it's difficult, but the truth is that you will never compare yourself to a woman, right?
No, I think we do actually, because, so for example, I do a lot of work with one of the England's women's hookers, Vicky Fleetwood, and so there are a lot of comparisons that we can do. So there are a couple of aspects of the game in the position that I play where we can compare, and I watch her doing a line-out throw. You probably don't know what it is, but it's a line. You throw the ball above your head. It's easier than it looks.
But I'm sure you hit it much stronger than them.
Well, I can't really talk for how strong they are, but yeah, I don't know whether anyone will ever sort of come across to play in the men's game.
I'm just asking this because this is what women in Formula One we're facing, because they think that because we're driving a car that we are the same as men, which is completely not true. Because we have to face downforce and G-force, which is really high in every corner, and they just compare us as men, and I think it's not fair, because then we will never be in the same level as them.
You should be sitting here, Carmen. You're asking the real questions. Very good, very good.
Hi, thanks all, very interesting. My name's Andy Owen from CSM. Jamie, you've clearly got a lot of admiration for Maro. The gentleman from Lucozade and Suntory and from Vitality, which companies do you admire that you think are setting the pace in your respective industries in this way of getting people moving more, changing lives?
You go first.
Well, at the risk of this becoming a mutual admiration society, actually, I do. We're looking to find companies that are very progressive on this agenda. I think the work that Neville and his company has done is really groundbreaking, because it proves that you've been very brave, taking a new business model, and are rewarding people for living healthier lives, and it's making commercially good sense for you. And it's driving new levels of activity and fitness, and I think that's fantastic. I think there are a lot of companies that are trying to do the right thing, and certainly those with the bigger footprints are the ones that could possibly have the most influence. So it's one of the reasons why we're working quite closely with Tesco's, for example, to see what we can do together to just broaden the reach, because it's not getting more people to take a little bit more exercise bit by bit. It's difficult to make that shift. It's about behaviour change, which is always the most difficult thing. But if you can just make those first steps, it could be amazing what we could achieve.
So I think Lucozade are doing a great job. I think technology has changed the world significantly in the world of this quantifiable self. So wearable technologies, we're seeing a huge amount of companies have come out and are competing in this space. So I think they have, highlighted the issue of physical activity to a large degree. And then in terms of nutrition, I think, there are companies that are understanding that to be successful, they've got to, purchase well, they've got to, have healthy ingredients in their product. And I think that is going to make the difference. The millennials of today want to do business going forward with companies that are a force for social good. So I think we can't underestimate that. But if you look at companies like Apple and Fitbit and the likes thereof, Samsung, I don't want to, Garmin, the whole lot of them, I think they've played a major role in getting people to understand, the world of, quantifiable self and challenging yourself. And I think that technology has played a major role and will continue to do so.
Hello. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm from The Telegraph. And just picking up on your absolutely accurate point about the terrible levels of reporting that take place by female journalists in sport, and also on your point about behavioural change being important, I would like to ask the panel, how do you think we can make a practical change in the behaviour of sports stars and sports brands to encourage the female voice? In the United States, for example, there's terrible discrimination against female journalists who are trying to conduct interviews and are shot down by, I won't name them, sports players. How do you think we can take practical steps to encourage more women to join journalism and sport?
Good question. I think, Carmen, you're probably best qualified
really?
to lead the discussion on this one, aren't you?
Well, it's a difficult one, but I will say that obviously, even I feel it as well in Spain, that the support is not the same as for female than for men, but I feel a little bit that it's growing. I don't know if you will agree with me. I don't know much about journalists. I'm talking about the athletic side because I've been, for 1 year, I've been Adidas ambassador. So they are growing as well with the Adidas woman. I mean, Adidas, as you all know, is a huge group, but on the Adidas woman side, they're growing 40% every year. So that means that because all the women we're integrating more in the sports, the brands are coming as well, so they support more athletes. So I think supporting like the young generation to get more into sports will make bigger athletes. So that it will be like, one thing and after the other.
But Neville, your statistics you read out a few moments ago were quite sobering. But to me, it feels like we're at a tipping point. It feels like I'm seeing more women's sport on television than ever before. I'm reading more, albeit still less than men's sport. But it just feels like we're on the edge of a real tipping point. I mean, would you agree?
I think so. I think, in answer to that question more specifically, I think we need more role models. I think you are seeing with the major broadcasters on their talk shows, their sports hosting, we are starting to see, in football, out of the 7 or 8 people who are doing the on BT Sport, you've got 1 female now, which is good, and hopefully next year it'll be 2 and 3. But I also think it's incumbent upon those entities to actually create the need and create. You talk about, you work for the Telegraph. How many positions are available for women sports journalists? They should be sponsoring programs at universities, getting people in at a younger age. So I think there's a lot that can be done, but I do agree with you. I think that, 3-4 years ago, you didn't see any woman, at the forefront of whether it was rugby or football. But I think ultimately it's getting the prominence of the actual sport being played upper level. And I don't know, I think that the sports code that gets that right. So for example, I know rugby, you sometimes played, after the internationals, the women played. Why would they play afterwards? Why wouldn't they play before? So at least half the stadium is watching and getting televised before. Now, is it because they don't want to mess up the turf before you get there? I don't know the practicalities of it. But I do think that in sports like cricket and rugby and football, there's something about giving equal prominence over time that will actually elevate it.
Peter, Jamie, any further comments?
I think the media has a huge role to play in the even balance, and I agree with you, John. I'm seeing a lot more female sport getting good, serious coverage, and I think it's then the free market will then take us in this direction. So if I'm just a quick story on Lucozade. Lucozade Sport, I think, is a very male brand. The history is around Daley Thompson, Linford Christie, Alan Shearer, all these big male sporting heroes. We've shifted our marketing campaign to try and get a broader female base. And it's not about hard exercise, it's just about a little bit more exercise every day. And the surprising fact is now that 54% of our buyers of Lucozade Sport are female. Yeah, and it's been a major shift over the last 12 months. So this can, the money will follow the market. And I think that's what we're seeing in media, and I'd really like to see more of that, and our mainstream media channels stepping into it even more than they are at the moment. And the money will follow.
In fact, I met Emily Sykes the other day, who's one of your ambassadors for Fitwater.
Absolutely, and that's a good example. So we would never have thought about Emily Skye as an ambassador for our brand, but her social media reach is bigger than the combined populations of Wales, Scotland and Ireland. And she's fabulous, she's a lovely lady, and a beautiful ambassador for our brand, and a great role model for women everywhere. And it's not about being super strong, it's just being about healthy, loving your body and feeling good about who you are.
Exactly right.
Neville, a serious question for you, then a less serious one for you, Jamie. It's Henry from Essentially Here. Neville, what about the US? They have a very high sugar and health issue. How are you doing anything over there to assist them?
I think they've got bigger problems than just that at the moment.
Just saying.
We have a business in the US. I mean, the US is a massive, very competitive marketplace. So the Vitality program does exist in the US, but much more at a corporate level. So getting into companies. We actually think that employers are best placed to actually change people's behaviors, because it's a homogeneous group of people that is sort of controlled. You can communicate with them. And we're starting to see results, but I think there are broader political issues around, taking sugar out of drinks. We've seen what failed in New York around limiting the size of sugary drinks, etc. The US, I think, is a society that is, got a lot of lobby groups, and it's quite difficult to break through there. I think we've got much better chance in a country like the UK.
Jamie, tell us a story from New Zealand.
What kind of story do you want to hear?
Nighttime.
Nighttime story. Oh, you stitched me up. We had a good time on the tour. I thought it was great. One story. Well, what I'll say is, so the 3 days that sort of preceded the end of the third test were probably 3 of the biggest days on the beers I've ever had in my life, and I think I'm still coming down from it now. So I'm just about ready to drink another beer again.
That's interesting you say that, because our view of modern sport is that you guys, live the life of monks and nuns, and actually it's no fun. It's all about early to bed. It's all about nutrition. It's all about training all the time, and actually living a monastic life. Is that a myth?
Yes. It's your choice at the end of the day, I think, no? Because then, it's what gives you more. I remember when I was very young, 12 or 13, that my friends were telling me, oh, but you're not going to the cinema this weekend. And I was like, no, I have a race. And I was like, a race? And you going there for what? So this was what really was making me happy at that time. So then you make choices, and then by the time that you grow, and then you have to sacrifice much more bigger things than just going to the cinema on the weekends. But for sure, it's a different life.
Yeah, absolutely. But Jamie, surely rugby has become more serious compared with 10, 15 years ago. The professional era must have ushered in some significant changes.
Yeah, hugely. And I think, Carmen, like what you were saying, you often do have sacrifices. So playing professional sport is amazing, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But there are some things that you miss out on a personal level. But there are also, you have to pick your opportunities when you can go and have a good crack with your mates, or have a few beers. And I think that's a big thing that we found at Sarries, is that when it's time to work, it's time to work. But You've also got to enjoy and celebrate your victories or draws, and that was a bit of that, and that's a big thing, and I think it's hugely important for team morale. And I often think the best way of getting to know someone is by going for a beer with them, and you know, we've done that a few times at Sarries as well.
I bet you have. Well, sadly, we're almost out of time, so just one final question from me. And if you look ahead 5 years' time, perhaps, and choose one trend or innovation you think will make, you know, a big difference in perhaps your sport or the world of sports partnership, sponsorship. 5 years' time, what's going to transform our world? Carmen, why don't you start?
Well, I will say that the woman will transform the world.
And I wouldn't argue with you. Very good, very good. Peter?
Current topic, I think mental well-being, and you know, obviously we just had Mental Health Day, and it's for me, and for my business, is about being happy in the workplace. And Jamie, you're talking about what it's like at Sarries, and actually you grew up with those guys, and they're your friends as well as your teammates. And clearly, there's something that you feel good in each other's company. You're happy to work together, and you also see some teams, some very high potential professional teams that simply don't seem to gel. You can think about our football team, perhaps, and you kind of wonder what the culture is and what it feels like in that business. And you know, the simple thing about asking somebody and inquiring, how are you? So how are you really feeling today? And, you know, we all have a crap day at work and things don't go so well, and it impacts performance. And I think that for me is going to be an increasingly big trend. It's not just physically how you are, it's how you are in your head and your heart.
Jamie, from a rugby perspective?
I think just making the game as global as possible. Like you said, 2019 is a huge opportunity for us, and I think being able to reach out to as many people as we possibly can. I think potentially live streaming games is going to be a big opportunity for us to get to people who aren't able to access rugby in certain ways, whether it be in their country or just in their region. So I think that's a good opportunity for us to branch out to those, to get to as many people as we can.
Very good. Neville, wrap it all up for us. Final thoughts this evening?
No pressure, huh? I think people are going to consume sport and entertainment in a very different way in the next few years, and we've seen that already, you know, in terms of younger people where they're watching their sport. It's not going to be the traditional sort of mediums that we know about. And I think as businesses we need to understand and adapt to that changing consumer base, because what worked for us today and yesterday is not going to work for us tomorrow, and it's how we can actually adapt to that changing environment. You know, you're just talking about simple things like where they're going to be watching Premier League football. Are they going to be watching it on their, you know, through Amazon as opposed to through Sky or the likes thereof? You know, and I think there's going to be a shifting landscape, and I think we all have to be adaptable, and we've got to look for new opportunities, because if we're going to just think that we can carry on doing the same thing and get the same results, I think we're going to all be in for a bit of a wake-up call. No?
I think you're absolutely right, but sadly we're out of time, but thank you so much for your fascinating input tonight. It's been fantastic having you here. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please show our appreciation for our panellists tonight?